back to Fan and Flame Dates. On this date, we're going to look at the difference between a covenant and a contract. A covenant is an unconditional promise that's made that will be honored no matter what happens. A contract, on the other hand, is an agreement between two or more people that is very conditional upon meeting certain expectations and making specified actions. Now, it's very important that marriages are built on covenants, unconditional promises to one another, the vows that we make till death do us part. But in this culture in which we live, marriages become more contractual in nature. We tend to come into our marriage saying, listen, I'm going to love you if you continue to make so much money. I'm going to love you if you continue to look this way, or I'm going to love you if you can take care of my children. I'm going to love you if, paragraph 37 in our marriage arrangement, that you do the dishes 3 nights a week for me, or whatever the case might be. We look for ways to get out of marriages today as opposed to staying in them. So let's explore this idea of covenant and contract a little more deeply. When I do weddings, the couples take vows together. And usually they stand, they face each other, and they hold hands. And I have them repeat after me. I, Bruce, take you, Karen, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, right? And then we talk about for better, for worse, for richer, poorer, sickness, and health, for as long as you both shall live. And we repeat that. And then we get to the part of the ceremony where we exchange rings to symbolize that we're going to hold on to those vows. And often I describe the ring. It's a circle. It has no end, has no beginning. It's an unbreakable love, and it's made out of pure metal, pure gold, and our love for each other is to be pure. And we wear them as reminders that we've made a covenant, we've made a vow, a promise. It says, you're the one and only in my life till death do us part, for better, for worse, for richer, poor, sickness, and health. And then we say, this ring I give you in token and pledge
of our constant faith and abiding love.
Can you get it on?
Yes.
Atta girl. And then you give me my ring, and we review those vows too.
This ring I give thee in token and pledge of our constant faith and abiding love.
There you go. And couples do that, and we're to wear our rings as a reminder of the covenant that exists between our spouse and ourselves, that it's unbreakable.
And it's before God. Is this always easy? I'm going to say no. There are many times that it's hard, it's difficult, but it takes...
You were looking for that out clause in the contract, huh?
I was. It's one of those things where you really have to determine in your heart that that's what you're going to do, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the distractions and the things that might lead you astray. It's important to remember that I've made a decision, I've made a choice, and with God's help, I can do this and love Bruce and treasure him, be thankful for him because he's God's gift to me.
And you said something very important. When we start the wedding ceremony, we say, before God and these witnesses. And there's a verse in the book of Numbers that talks about the importance of making a vow before the Lord.
In Numbers 32, when a man makes a vow to God or binds himself by an oath to do something, he must not break his word. He must do exactly what he has said. God
really takes vows seriously. He is not one that accepts a condition. Karen and I have a friend who just passed away after 60 years of marriage, and he has quite a story to illustrate the power of covenant and unconditional love. When the two of them first got married 60 years ago, it was within their first year of marriage, she was diagnosed with MS. We know that MS is a very devastating disease. It's chronic. It began to immobilize her over the course of the years, and their whole life changed in their first year of marriage.
But they were committed to each other, and they desired to have a family. They adopted a son, and then they went on to have 3 more of their own children. And they just worked tirelessly in making their marriage work despite the hardships and the circumstances that they found themselves in.
And it wasn't long before she was using a cane, and then she digressed into a wheelchair. This friend of ours was the leader or president of a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and he scheduled his whole life around his wife and making sure that she got to where she needed to be. And he would physically lift her in and out of her wheelchair, in and out of bed, and his schedule had to fix that. He never paid anyone to take care of her. He did it all himself. He believed that was his commitment, and he did that year after year after year till it began to take a toll on his body. His knees began to give way, his back was permanently damaged, and he continued to care for her until the day he went into the hospital to have the surgery, which was ultimately the surgery that ended his life. But what a powerful testimony about commitment. 60 years of living with a wife. And he said, for better, for worse. Some could argue that he got the worst. For sickness and in health, he got the sick. But he was a great mentor to us and an example of what covenant looks like.
And along with that, though, he couldn't do it on his own. His wife played a huge role in that. She had a sense of humor. She never gave up. She honored her husband. She loved her husband. And those things, working together to love each other unconditionally despite the circumstances, was the glue to hold them together. But more importantly, it was through God's strength and God's strength alone that they were able to live a life like that and be a
Example for
everyone who saw their lives.
Well, that story reminds me of a story in the Bible. It's a story of a prophet, an Old Testament prophet. Some of you may be familiar with, some of you don't know. His name was Hosea. And one day Hosea was just going about his business, and the Lord said to him, "Hey, Hosea, I want you to marry Gomer." And if you knew Gomer, Gomer was a woman of ill repute. She was a prostitute. She was a harlot. And Hosea wanted to make sure that he heard the Lord right and said, "Are you sure?" And God said, "Yes." So Hosea was obedient to the Lord, and he married Gomer. And if you don't know Gomer, you have to go out to Google and Google Gomer Pyle in order to appreciate this next part of the story. But, when Hosea came and proposed, she said, "Golly, I'm getting married," and Gomer got married, and the two of them had 3 children together. And one morning, Hosea got up and surprise, surprise, surprise. Gomer ran off with some other guys. And Hosea was left to parent the 3 kids by himself. And before long, God comes back to the prophet Hosea and says, "Hey, I want you to go back down and buy Gomer. She's on the slave trading block." And Hosea again wondered, is God really serious? And said, "What do you want me to do? I want you to go buy Gomer." And the prophet said, "Man, no way Hosea is going to go do that. No way." And but he went down with his 12 shekels and his sheaves of barley, and he bought her back. And God wanted to prove a point, wanted to make a point. He said, "Hosea, you represent me, God, and I've made an unconditional covenant, a promise to my people Israel, that they can never do anything that will cause them to stop being my people. And Gomer was not faithful to you before you met her. She was not faithful to you while you were married to her. And she probably won't be faithful in the future. And she represents Israel. Israel wasn't faithful to me in the past, in the present, nor the future. But I have made an unconditional promise, a covenant that she will be my people no matter what." And that's the kind of love that we need to have together as husband and wife. There is nothing that you can do that's going to break the commitment that I've made before God and these witnesses.
Here's a little picture of what marriage looks like in today's culture. We call it a normal marriage. A young man and a young woman meet each other. They develop a relationship, and then those feelings grow into a feeling of love. And they believe that love is the basis of marriage, and they go ahead and get married. And after a little bit of time, those feelings begin to diminish, and we have 2 unhappy people, and what kept the marriage together is no longer there. And that's not the way God wants our marriages to be based on love and on a feeling, but he wants them to be based on a commitment. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We have a young man, young woman. They develop that relationship. They fall in love, but they are a little bit different in that they decide to seal and protect this relationship with a vow, with a covenant. and for as long as they both shall live, for better, for worse, for richer or poor, in sickness and in health. And this rectangle represents that vow. And what's going to happen, and Karen and I have been married 40 years, and there are times when, Karen would tell you that she didn't feel in love, and there's times when I would say that I did not feel in love. And while that relationship might go through some challenges and tests and leave us unhappy, we still have made a commitment. We've made a vow that keeps us together, and it forces us to begin to rework and to refocus on each other and to building that relationship and to restoring that love. In fact, it would probably even grow so that it's greater than it was before the day we got married. So that's why it's important for us, and why God intended for us to be sealing our love relationship with a vow that will keep us together so that our love can continue to grow.
Well, it's time to go to our knee to knee, nose to nose questions. So, turn and face each other, put your knees together, look into each other's eyes, and then read the questions on the screen. Take some time to evaluate how you're doing in this area of covenant versus commitment. If you'd like to help us make these Fan to Flame dates free to everybody who watches, go out to our website, fantoflamedates.com, and click on the Donate Now button. We look forward to seeing you again next time on Fan to Flame Dates.